Alright guys, with free agency getting closer and closer, there are some big names out there, and I thought we would match them up with what I think would be a perfect fit for some of these guys. So the first guy we're going to be talking about is Eric Berry. Now, a lot of people thought Eric Berry was going to get franchise tagged. Actually, he's making more money than the highest paid safety does. I think the highest paid safety in the NFL makes $10 million a year. He'd be making $12 million this year if he did get franchise tagged. I think I'm right about that. You can check that down. I'm not 100% sure on that. But Eric Berry could change a defense for the better. Eric Berry is that good. Eric Berry is an elite talent, and he had one of the best years of safety has ever had. He literally won. He put I think was it 9 or 8 points up in one game for obviously against the Atlanta Falcons, one of the more elite offenses in the NFL. And Eric Berry can change your defense. Now, depending on what your defense needs, everything else like that. And again, a secondary is very, very important to have in the league. Almost just as important to have a pass rush because of how pass happy the NFL is. And most of the elite offenses in the NFL are elite passing offenses. So the team that I think that fits Eric Berry the most is the Oakland Raiders. Now, the Oakland Raiders gave up a lot of yards, a lot of passing yards the first, I think, 4 or 5 games of the year. They kind of tightened it up a little bit. But they really don't have. They have Khalil Mack and Bruce Irvin, who are elite pass rushers, and Khalil Mack's even more than that. He's just a great defensive player. He's one of the best defensive players in the NFL. But Eric Berry could add something to that. They need. I really do think they need help in the secondary because I really don't think they would ever beat the Patriots. I don't think they would have beat the Steelers. I don't think they would have beat some of these teams that have elite quarterbacks and or have elite passing games because their secondary is a little weak. You look at their secondary, they have Carl Joseph, who's a very promising player, had a very good rookie season. I think he's going to be a stud. And they have Reggie Nelson, who's out of his prime. He's a little overrated. I think he's a little overrated. I don't think he deserved to go to the Pro Bowl. But Reggie Nelson, he's obviously, I think he's going out of his prime for sure. He's an older player. On the cornerback position, you have David Amerson, for the kid from Washington. He had a pretty good season, but he's not anything elite or anything lockdown Richard Sherman level, lockdown Richard Sherman level. You got DJ Hayden, which I think most Raiders fans wanted a little bit more out of, picking him in the first round years ago. So Eric Berry, I think, would add what a Charles Woodson brought to the Oakland Raiders. I'm not saying he's Charles Woodson. I'm not saying he's on that level, but he's pretty dang good, and I think he would make that defense feared like somebody like the Denver Broncos, who people just fear that defense, or the Seattle Seahawks. I think Eric Berry adds that Earl Thomas level of talent to that defense to push it over the top and push that football team over the top. I think people would fear that defense because when you play the Raiders, you don't fear that you don't fear the defense. You just got to make sure you outscore the Raiders, which is extreme. Most NFL teams can't score 30 points a game, and the Raiders do that on a consistent basis. They have a great run game of one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. They have a great receiving core with Michael Crabtree and Amari Cooper, and Seth Roberts. They just don't fear that. You fear Khalil Mack, who can game wreck. He can just wreck your game plan. But I don't think they fear the defense as a whole. I think if you can block Khalil Mack and somehow take him out of the football game, you can win football games. I think adding Eric Berry, they could win games just off of their defense. I think that adds an element to that defense, which makes them even more scary. Because you get time again. You go against some of these elite passing offenses in the NFL, and I think you need an elite secondary, not a good secondary. I'm talking to win the Super Bowl. I'm not talking to go to the playoffs. I'm talking to go to I think what the Raiders want to do is to go to the AFC Championship or go to the Super Bowl and possibly win one, or you can just get there. I think you need an elite secondary to do that. You look at the Atlanta Falcons that made it obviously last season. They didn't have an elite secondary. They had a pretty good secondary. And we kind of saw that with Tom Brady just carving it up. The Patriots had an elite secondary. They had a Malcolm Butler. They had a Logan Ryan, an Eric Rowe, Devin McCourty. These are players that are elite at what they do, and I think Eric Berry adds that to that Oakland Raiders defense to make them even more scary. And I do think a lot of teams would fear that defense, and I do think that would add something that the Raiders need, which is an elite player in that secondary. I don't think they have that, and I think Eric Berry would add. And again, you're getting one of the best players at that position, and I think that would push that team over the top and make them Super Bowl contenders or AFC Championship contenders. I really do think they would be either the second best team in the AFC or the best. So let's move on to the next guy, and this is a very interesting one because he's another guy who could just turn around your franchise, and that's Adrian Peterson. Now, Adrian Peterson, obviously, he's had knee issues throughout his career. No, we've never seen anybody bounce back from an ACL tear like Adrian Peterson did. In my opinion, probably the greatest performance I've ever seen in my lifetime of an NFL player ever. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that, and I don't think, I've never, when Peyton Manning passed for 55 touchdowns or something, how crazy that was, almost 6,000 yards, that to me is not even close to what Adrian Peterson did. And it's kind of similar to when he tore his ACL last time, where everybody was kind of doubting him, can he ever be AP again? This one's a little bit the narrative's a little bit different on this one. It's like Adrian Peterson's 31 years old, he's old, we know running backs don't last, they don't have that kind of shelf life. Does he still have something left in the tank? And I think he's going to use that as motivation to just smack everybody in the mouth this upcoming season, like he did in 2012. So, a perfect fit. A lot of people throw the Giants around, which I think is a good fit, because you look at the Giants' offense, and they weren't consistent last season. They had an elite defense with Olivier Vernon, Janoris Jenkins, Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, Eli Apple. They had a very, very, very good defense. And obviously I forgot Landon Collins, the best player on that defense. And they have a very, very good defense. And if they re-sign Jason Pierre-Paul, that makes them a top 5 defense in the NFL. They probably are top. I don't know if I think they're just out of the top 5 without JPP. But they have. My point is they have a great defense. The offense really failed them towards the end of the season. They weren't consistent. I can't remember what they averaged, but it was very low. They have Sterling Shepard. They have Odell Beckham. Sterling Shepard, by the way, he's going to be really, really good. And obviously Odell is one of the best receivers in the NFL. And Eli Manning is getting up there in age. And I think it's what? And obviously they had trouble protecting Eli with some people like Eric Flowers. Now, who was utter trash, but they had problems protecting a quarterback who's almost in their, I think, mid-30s or just out of it. So Eli's getting up there in age. And I think they line up, I think it's like something like 70-something% of the time. I thought we're 75% of the time they line up in the shotgun. Or more, maybe it's even a little bit more than that. But they line up in the shotgun a lot. Excuse me. I think if you got somebody like Adrian Peterson, Paul Perkins, by the way, is no slouch, but I think he's no Adrian Peterson, though. If you add Adrian Peterson, I think it gives you stability of that offense. It gives you a new identity in that offense. It takes a lot of pressure off of Eli. It takes some pressure off of Odell. It takes a lot of pressure off of Odell. And it makes that offense more consistent. It also adds a leader in that locker room. Odell's all over the place. Even people like Victor Cruz and Eli Manning didn't really seem to be able to control him. Ben McAdoo, he's a younger head coach, obviously. He's kind of new to it, so that makes a little bit more sense. So I think adding that adds some leadership qualities to that offense that they don't have now. And it would just adds first of all, like I said, it would make that offense more consistent and adds some stability to that offense, and it gives them another identity than just passing it constantly. And I think it makes that offense I think that makes it more consistent. I think it takes pressure off of Eli, takes pressure off of that offensive line, and just makes them an overall better football team, and it makes them an NFC contender. It makes them definitely NFC Championship contender, and NFC, maybe a Super Bowl. I don't know if I'd go that far, but makes them a contender to win something serious, not just the division, which they could, if they add Adrian Peterson, they probably are better than the Cowboys are, because of that defense. Cowboys defense you just can't catch up to I don't think you can catch up to what the Giants have done in 1 year. Maybe they can. I doubt it, though, because Olivier Vernon and Landon Collins are some of the best at their position. I mean, those guys are like top 5 at their position. So the Giants could make a serious move in that division if they got Adrian Peterson. And another wild card team that I want to throw out there, and this is more of a fantasy than it is realistic, and I know that, and I know you could poke holes in this all over the place, but it's something that is interesting. and that's the Green Bay Packers. Now, when you look at the Green Bay Packers, they're similar to the Giants. They don't line up under center all that often. They line up under center more than the Giants do. But, dude, Aaron Rodgers has had to carry that offense for, I think, the last 2 years now. It's just been him. It really has. I know Timeout Grummy toward the end of the year came on really strong. He was giving them 100 a game. He was a very consistent player, and they used him in a variety of different ways when they had all those injuries. But adding Adrian Peterson, I think, adds the same thing it adds for the Giants. And Adrian Peterson just adds another superstar, Hall of Fame caliber player. It takes some pressure off of Aaron Rodgers, which maybe he hasn't had through his whole career. Because Adrian Peterson, and this takes pressure off of Adrian Peterson and makes him less injury prone, by the way. To play with another superstar who both players can still carry an offense. I think Adrian Peterson can still do that. It makes the Packers a Super Bowl threat. I really, really do. I think it makes that offense so elite that I'm talking Falcons level elite. If Adrian Peterson could stay healthy for a whole season, I mean, could you imagine faking handoffs to AP and bootlegging Aaron Rodgers? I mean, that would be insane. I know Vikings fans would hate that just because it's a division rival, but I mean, just the thought of that is crazy. Okay, so the next guy we're going to be talking about, has been talked about the whole offseason, and I'm kind of getting sick and tired of it myself. So let's try to find this man a team, and that's Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, Jimmy Garoppolo, I have a lot of problems with, and it's not his fault. I think it's more everybody else, the media, hyping up him more than he actually is. A lot of analysts and people in the media have labeled him a franchise quarterback. You've played 2 games. You played 2 regular season games. And somebody we're going to be talking about later on in the video has played a whole career and set franchise records and been consistent his whole career and put up Hall of Fame caliber numbers. This guy's played 2 games. I think he's thrown he threw 4 touchdowns. And people are labeling him a franchise quarterback. I'm not hating on Jimmy Garoppolo, because I think the word you should use, I think they're misphrasing it, is he has franchise potential. He has franchise quarterback potential, but he is not a franchise quarterback yet. I mean, he hasn't proved anything yet. He's played 2 games in the NFL. I know the Dolphins' performance was the best. If you look at what he did against the Cardinals, coming to find out the Cardinals aren't that good of a football team. So I don't know. I just don't. That irks me, because there's some other quarterbacks in the NFL that just have put up really good numbers throughout their whole career, and just haven't got that recognition. Same thing with Matt Ryan. Some people before this season wouldn't even call him a franchise quarterback, and they're calling Jimmy Garoppolo. He played 2 games. Anyway, I like Jimmy Garoppolo. I think he's gonna be. I think he can be a very good player. I don't think he is right now, but he can be. He hasn't really proved that. So. The best fit, I think, for Jimmy Garoppolo is the Cleveland Browns. And the reason I say that is you look around the NFL and you see people like, NFL teams like the San Francisco 49ers, you see the Chicago Bears who want to get out of that Jay Cutler situation that they're in. They have to find a replacement for him. And you see these football teams. The difference between them and Cleveland is one guy, and his name is Hugh Jackson. I don't think there's only 3 coaches I can think of in the NFL that can teach players on such a high level that it can change their whole career. And those coaches are Bill Belichick, Adam Gase, and Hugh Jackson. I really do believe that. I think Hugh Jackson is an elite NFL head coach, and if given time, he can turn that Cleveland Browns franchise around. So Jimmy Garoppolo going to a quarterback-friendly system, like a Josh McDaniels offense, to a Hugh Jackson offense. We saw what he did with Andy Dalton, and we saw what. I mean, if you watched some of the Cleveland Browns game, just watch the Dolphins versus Browns game, and how he utilized Terrell Pryor in the Wildcat, for God's sakes. It's just insane. It's insane. So he's going to a very good coaching staff in Cleveland, and I don't know about an organization as a whole, but he's going to a very, very good place to have success in the NFL, and I think that's his best chance to do it. Now, I'm not hitting on Jimmy Garoppolo, because he has franchise caliber skills. He really, really, really does. He has a lot of people criticize his pocket presence when he was coming out of college. I think he has a very, very good pocket presence. I think his feet in the pocket are pretty dang good. I think he moves in the pocket phenomenally. I think he is very good. From the 2 games that I saw him play, I mean, this is, and not even 2 games. It was one in a game, not even in a half. It was like maybe 25%. Like, you know, from what the small sample size that we had of Jimmy Garoppolo, he moved in the pocket very well. His release is insanely quick. He makes decisions really, really fast, super fast. His downfield accuracy is a question mark. I don't think we've seen that enough. And coming out of college, a lot of people criticized him of that. But he's super smart, hard worker. He has all the franchise quarterback type of tools that you need. I mean, he's one of the quickest releases in the NFL. He moves in the pocket, like I said, very, very well. And I think him going to Hugh Jackson, somewhere where he can going to a very good coaching staff and one of the best head coaches in the NFL, I think that his stock goes up, and I think that's him going to a schematic fit, and I think that's him going to a place where he can find himself and have success in the NFL. So I think the Cleveland Browns are a perfect fit for him. So the next guy we're going to be talking about is a player that I alluded to earlier, and that's Kirk Cousins. Now, Kirk Cousins, I don't know what else you have to do to prove that you're a franchise quarterback, because in my mind, he's a franchise quarterback. He broke franchise records, franchise records that one of the most historic franchises ever in the Washington Redskins, one of the oldest franchises in the NFL. He broke franchise records for them. So that alone is pretty impressive. I know a lot of people bring up the fourth quarter performances, and he chokes in, game-winning blah 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 blah. And he did have a very, very good supporting cast in Washington. He had an elite offensive line. He had an elite receiver corps with Djax, Pierre Garçon, Jordan Reed at tight end, Crowder. He had Josh Doxson. They drafted him in the draft. They really didn't need another receiver. But yeah, and Jay Gruden, who's one of the better offensive minds in the NFL. So they had a good nucleus there. They had a good supporting cast. Kirk Cousins thrived in that. He really did. They had Robert Kelly, who came on strong. Their defense is where they really failed them. It failed them. That's the reason they lost so many games. It's not Kirk Cousins' fault. It's that defense's fault. So I think Kirk Cousins walks, and I think he goes to the San Francisco 49ers, where Kyle Shanahan is and John Lynch reportedly loves Kirk Cousins and thinks he is a franchise guy. So if he did walk, that's where he's going. I think the Redskins are going, not the Redskins, I think the 49ers are going to jump at the chance to get somebody like Kirk Cousins, because it's so hard to find a franchise quarterback in the NFL. It's the hardest thing to do in sports. To find a quarterback that is on that level is the hardest thing to do in sports. Your team might go through 10 years of drafting and not find one. When you find one, it's I mean, look at the Seattle Seahawks. You really, other than players like who played for them at the end of their prime, like Warren Moon. I forget the guy's name in the 80s. He was okay. He had a couple good years with Steve Largent. They've never had a franchise quarterback in the history of that franchise until Russell Wilson, who is a Seattle Seahawks Hall of Fame. Like, that guy, he's on that level. So that is just to show, that is how hard it is to find a franchise quarterback. And to let one go like that, and like I said, I think that he fits the 49ers perfectly. Kirk Cousins he's got a beautiful deep ball. He moves in the pocket well. He sees the field very well. He'll fit. He's athletic. He's great at bootlegging, which fits Kyle Shanahan's offense really well. I'm not gonna say he's on the level of Matt Ryan, because Matt Ryan is like a field general. The man sees the field like no other. But Kirk Cousins he's a really good field general, and he'll fit Kyle Shanahan's offense to a T. And he's more athletic than Matt Ryan. And he's got all the skills that you want in a franchise quarterback. He has the production that you look for in a franchise quarterback, with his quarterback rating being a 97, I think, which is insane. It would be insane if the Redskins don't re-sign him, but I think if he went to San Francisco, I think they would be building something. Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch would be building something, as long as the owner doesn't get in the way of it, something very special down there in San Francisco. Okay, so the next guy is another. This is the biggest question mark of them all. This is the biggest. This is the big. This is the big white whale, and that is Tony Romo. Now, Tony Romo is a big question mark for a lot of reasons because he could change a franchise. He can make your if you have everything else except a quarterback, he can make you a Super Bowl contender. And when I think about that, you've got everything else but a quarterback. One team comes to mind, and that's the Houston Texans. Now, the Houston Texans have such a good defense, it's insane. If they somehow keep back AJ Boye, which I hope they don't because I'm a Dolphins fan, but if they do, they have Jonathan Joseph. They have this great secondary. They have Quentin Dimps. They have a very, very good secondary. They have one of the best defensive lines in the NFL with J.J. Watt coming off the edge. You got Whitney Merciless, who's one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. And he's going to be it's insane. You got J.J. Watt, Jadeveon Clowney, who's one of the best defensive players in the NFL, had a break, just slammed they just hit that baseball out of the park this season. They have an insanely talented offense with Lamar Miller. They have a very good offensive line, so they're going to protect Tony, keep him healthy. That's why teams like Denver and Arizona don't really make a lot of sense to me because I don't think they can keep Tony Romo healthy. They have a great receiver core with Hop, who at one point in time was one of the best receivers in the NFL till old Brock Osweiler came along, and we know how that worked out. And I think it would finally give the Houston Texans a franchise quarterback that they haven't had since probably Warren Moon in the Houston Oilers days. Matt Schaub, really, I don't know how Texans fans really feel about that. At one point he was elite, I guess. But yeah, I think Tony Romo would add. I think he pushes them over the top, makes that offense consistent and not inconsistent. I think him and Bill O'Brien. I mean, I think they can. And you know what? They hit the Patriots harder than the Steelers hit them. Than anybody they faced until the Super Bowl. They hit them hard. That defense gave Brady a lot of problems. So adding a Tony Romo makes them a Super Bowl contender for sure. And makes the Texans actually a legitimate, consistent football team that's not just relying on their defense. So that is going to be it, guys. I am Skagster1083, and I will see you guys in the next one.